Hey guys, first regards from here, and I'll be talking about the brand new Warhammer 40k community post that just came out from Games Workshop like 5 minutes ago. This is basically the follow-up to the reveal of the Captain Titus miniature we had last week, and we finally know what happened to Captain Acheran. It was with a heavy heart that I report Captain Acheran is officially dead, and not only is Captain Acheran dead, our boy Chairon is also dead. So we're going to read through this here, talk a bit about what this means for Space Marine 3 and overall Warhammer 40k lore, and give some of my thoughts on the current state of Titus as the captain of the second company. So first up here it says, Acheran's illustrious service came to an end upon the hive world of Trig, a vital and seemingly loyal stronghold that safeguarded the Pyromote system from Tyranid incursion after a Munitorum survey vessel and its escort of Mordian Iron Guard disappeared, letting out a single psychic scream before vanishing without a trace. Acheran led a strike force to investigate, accompanied by his decorated lieutenant, Brother Chairon. What they found was a powerful Genestealer cult embedded in the primary hive, their influence stretching from the Undercity all the way up to the spires, poised to crack open the world's defenses when the Tyranids arrive. The cult's uprising had already begun, threatened to spread across the entire planet, and in order to contain it, Acheran chose to activate the hive's anti-atomic lockdown protocols, sealing his entire force inside the city with a nearly endless horde of enraged cultists. This noble choice to sacrifice himself and his brothers kept the Genestealer cult bottled up and saved the world and a vulnerable sector from certain doom. Every last Space Marine that landed on Trig was slowly worn down in a series of increasingly desperate battles, and when Imperial reinforcements arrived to purge the last of the cult, they discovered that Acheran, Chairon, and the rest of their brothers had sold their lives to cull the untold numbers of Xenos hybrids. So our boy Acheran, guys, he's just fucking dead. He got killed by Genestealers with Chairon. Chairon was one of the oldest Space Marines in the Ultramarine Second Company. Really one of the oldest Space Marines in general. He was put in like cryo or something. He actually saw the Word Bearers burn Calth like 10,000 years ago. And what does this mean for 40k? What does this mean for Space Marine 3? Well, first up, I assume we're going to be having the replacement of Chairon with Titus here with Sergeant Matoris. Sergeant Matoris was in the trailer for the Captain Titus coronation here. And here we also have like a little bit more information about Captain Titus, but this explains a lot, guys. In the trailer, we saw that Titus was like very downtrodden. He looked very disillusioned at times, or like not super happy about his new job as the Warden of Ultramar. And I think part of that is because he just lost Acheran and Chairon. Like, he is pissed off. He recently promoted Gadriel as well. Gadriel is like the only surviving member of the original group now, besides Titus, to be in the second company with him, which is why he is now like the new Ancient or Standard Bearer. We can see that in the new model that came out for him that they revealed last week. But as far as what this means for Space Marine 3 and the overall setting, I mean, Captain Acheran dying, a captain of the Ultramarines company perishing, is a pretty huge event in 40k lore. Now, I'm curious to see how they're going to move this forward into the tabletop setting on top of the games, because first of all, Titus is being shoved to the forefront of 40k. He is now the poster boy of the poster boy faction of Ultramarines and Space Marines, more importantly. And they also talk about here, it says like, after his legendary victory against the Tyranids and Thousand Suns and the Residius system, his survival on a seemingly suicidal mission to destroy the Chaos artifact on Zasauj, and further successes against Tyranids on several worlds in the Bastior subsector, Titus was the clear candidate to succeed Acheran. Misgivings from many of his peers had long since been silenced, and Titus took up the role, swearing to honor his former captain's legacy as he leads the second company and fulfills the duties of the Masters of the Watch, a responsibility of the role. It is now Captain Titus's duty to fortify the borders of Ultramar and defend his chapter's realm even as it expands at Guilliman's command. So I really want to talk about this for a second, because a lot of people misunderstood what the trailer was about. You see, Titus is not in charge of retaking all 500 worlds of Ultramar. That will likely be dealt with by other successor chapters, potentially other chapters of Space Marines at Rabuti Guilliman's command, and other companies of the Ultramarines, of course. His job is to be the warden. He is to secure the areas or maintain the security of the areas that are already conquered. So Macrog and the outlying regions and stuff like that. Now, the main narrative for Titus here is that there's going to be like a 4-book series for both the tabletop gameplay on top of the narrative expansion, where he will run into a like lost Necron destroyer curse, basically, or like, you know, something that wants to eradicate all life. he will be encountering Necrons. Necrons were a huge, theorized thing for Space Marine 3 and stuff like that. Whether or not we will actually see Space Marine 3 have Necrons, we don't know for sure yet, but I think it seems pretty likely. I don't really know why they would be pushing Ultramarines to be encountering Necrons like this so heavily with like the narrative here, if they weren't trying to tease it for like the future of Space Marine 3, but we'll see in the future. Either way, it also says here that it is now Captain Titus's duty to fortify the borders, of Ultramar defend his chapter's realm, even as it expands at Gilliman's request. Every new conquest is another drain on resources, and his task is difficult in the extreme, but with his Wardens of Ultramar adding their substantial strength to his cause and an agile fleet of elite warriors at his command, Titus is exactly the Space Marine for the job. So it looks like the major narrative here in the tabletop is just going to be around Titus at the moment. Obviously 40k is an enormous universe here, but them really pushing a video game character into the forefront of the tabletop game, this is kind of unprecedented. Mystery and I talked about this the other day, that this hasn't really happened before. Usually the tabletop game will push forward the narrative for the video games, but not only do we have like a canonized Titus now, and potentially a Titus in the upcoming Henry Cavill show, we'll talk about that at some point in the future, but this is pretty big news for 40k, because the Games Workshop is starting to probably see like cash signs and be like, okay, Captain Titus is way more popular than Captain Acheran. Let's kill off Captain Acheran. Let's give Titus a new model. Maybe we can like pull some players into the tabletop game. Now, as far as the tabletop is concerned, I do want to talk about the Wardens of Ultramar that revealed last week in the other Warhammer community post. It says here, newly promoted Titus's express recommendation despite his relative youth among veterans. Ancient Gadriel hefts the massive banner of the Second Company, can always be found in the thickest fighting alongside the captain's mentor, veteran Sergeant Matoris. Both have ample experience fighting alongside Titus, and he values their advice above all others. So we see here, we have our boy Gadriel on top of veteran Sergeant Matoris. This may be a bit of a leap, but I kind of assume that in Space Marine 3, you will probably be playing as Captain Titus, Gadriel, and veteran Sergeant Matoris. That will be the three-man squad in that game, because obviously Chairon is now confirmed dead, and Captain Acheran is obviously dead as well. And having veteran Sergeant Matoris there, I think just makes a lot of sense, because this is the mentor of Titus, like they said. He's the one who brought him into the Ultramarines. He's been pushed to the forefront alongside Titus in these new announcement trailers on top of things like Secret Level. And he's a pretty interesting character. A lot of people are a huge fan of this guy, so having him as a playable character, that just makes a lot of sense. We won't know for sure until the actual reveal of Space Marine 3, obviously, but I assume we'll have him there. Now, I do want to mention that there are some other characters here that are showcased. There's like an astropath, and these guys are all working with the Second Company as well. How many of these guys are going to survive the 4-book narrative expansion that we'll talk about in a second? That remains to be seen, but as far as major characters that will live, I assume Gadriel will be fine, I assume Veteran Sergeant Matoris will be fine, and obviously Titus will be fine. Now, if we go down here past the Necron models, it does talk about the actual box set that will be coming out pretty soon here. It says this is 500 Worlds Titus. He's actually like the titular character of the expansion here. It says that this is presented as a 4-book box set enclosed in a decorative slipcase. And it'll be talking about the Ultramarine Second Company locked in a desperate struggle against a Necron force rife with the Destroyer Curse. So having Necrons in the forefront of this new expansion here, that's pretty damn cool. I think it's way more of a leap to say that, like, based off of this, they will guaranteed be in Space Marine 3. Obviously, Necrons are an incredibly popular Xenos faction within Warhammer 40k, but it's just way too soon to, like, say for sure if they're going to be the new faction. But having them brought up here as, like, brand new models interacting with the 500 Worlds new narrative expansion, I mean, you could make the leap. You could say they're probably going to be in Space Marine 3. I think a lot of people do want to see Necrons because, first of all, Necrons are just cool. They're like one of the most popular Xenos factions for a reason. On top of that, people are a huge fan of Tyranids, and the Necrons fighting the Tyranids is nothing new. The Silent King does not like Tyranids at all. Obviously, these guys are like the Destroyer Curse, so it's not exactly the same thing. But as far as like implications for the future, I think that does make sense. And as far as implications for 40k, I want to talk about why the fuck is Rabute Gilliman trying to retake all 500 Worlds of Ultramar? Because if you're unaware, there are the Death Guard. We're trying to like have a bit of an invasion of the Ultramar sector on top of other things. And Gilliman is busy overseeing the Indomitus Crusade. And on top of this, having the defense of the 500 Worlds fall to its people, it's a pretty big problem. And my take on this is that Rabute Gilliman knows that the Imperium needs a proper foothold in the galaxy if they ever want to properly expand. The Indominus Crusade was like the first major offensive humanity did in a very long time, because the best way to view the Imperium of Mankind is that the Imperium of Mankind is an empire on the decline. It is basically the Holy Roman Empire. It is still an incredibly powerful military force, but it is way past its peak. And what Rabute Gilliman is trying to do here, what Robot Girly Man is trying to do here is basically give them a foothold in the galaxy. We know the Lion is also back, and once the other Primarchs come back, which I think they probably will, at least like the ones that are still alive, which is, to be honest, most of them, I think they're setting up for a story where the Imperium tries to push a major offensive on the galaxy, because it's not to say that 40k is going to hit a crescendo in the storytelling, because I don't think there will be like an end times event or something like that, because 40k is just selling too well for there to be an end times event, if we're being honest here. But as far as having a major event between like the Imperium's offensive on top of the Necrons and Tyranids, I think we could be building up to that. I think it'd be pretty cool to see. I think that would have major story implications for Space Marine 3. And honestly, Rabute Gilliman coming back to the Imperium was one of the more interesting portions of semi-recent 40k lore in general. And I'm curious to see where they're going to take this and how this whole 500 Worlds event will impact future 40k projects in both gaming and the tabletop. And if we'll get like more video game tie-ins with the actual tabletop here, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How do you feel about Captain Acheran and Chairon being dead? Are you going to actually buy these miniatures or this box set? And as always, guys, thank you for watching. If you like content like this, subscribe for more, and take it easy. Bye.